Get ready for success. Leadership Strategies for Women is a show dedicated to providing practical and valuable strategies for emerging women leaders of today. It's your time to get inspired, motivated, and challenged to achieve your vision for success. And now, here's leadership speaker and coach, Ellie Nieves.
This is Leadership Strategies for Women Radio, and I'm your host, Ellie Nieves. I'm the founder and president of Leadership Strategies for Women, where I develop seminars and webinars to help women achieve career success, and I coach women who want to achieve more both personally and professionally. To learn more, please visit my website at leadershipstrategiesforwomen.com, or you can follow the Leadership Strategies for Women page on Facebook. Our guest today is Kelly Lyndgaard, and Kelly is the founder and CEO of Unshattered, a social enterprise that employs women in recovery to have them build a path toward economic independence and sustained sobriety. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ellie, for having me. It's an honor to be here, and I really appreciate it.
Well, Kelly, I'm looking forward to our talk today, and I would love to get started by learning a little bit more about your background.
Absolutely. I'm currently the founder of a nonprofit and running it as the CEO, which is not a path I ever thought that I would take. In college, I studied engineering and physics, went into the technology field, and spent 16 years climbing the corporate ladder, doing things like high-performance computing and mergers and acquisitions in the technology space, and spent some time on the software side of the business. My whole career took a path that I did not anticipate at all. I made a huge move a handful of years ago to come out to New York and work for corporate for our company, climbing the corporate ladder, and met an organization that I fell in love with, and these women working so hard to rebuild their lives that I left my executive career to go and help them out.
Wow, that's awesome. So basically you were volunteering your time and you discovered this organization?
They spoke at my church, and it really was a life-changing moment for me because I will confess to having been pretty judgmental about people struggling with addiction, sort of in the maybe you should make better choices and work harder and not do dumb things, which I'm embarrassed about now. But it took somebody's experience to change my life, learning that a lot of times there's a set of circumstances, but for the grace of God, if I had the same trauma and the same set of choices, I would have landed in the very same place. So it was a gal who shared her story of being 8 years old. Father had left the family. Her mother was ill, and so at 8 she was doing a lot of the work around the house, cooking her own dinner, doing her schoolwork, and she had a friend with a 15-year-old brother who thought it would be funny to get an 8-year-old high. Fast forward 10 years, and she's a homeless mainline heroin addict. And for the first time I thought, well, there is no other outcome to that story. So I got engaged with the Walter Hoving Home, working with the women there, and started what I thought would be a little bit of a fundraiser that has now turned out to be its own independent company, helping to build a path forward for the women after they've gone through 12 months of recovery to get clean.
Wow, that's great. So how did that all come together? When and at what point did you decide to launch Unshattered as you were going through your journey, learning more about the organization and starting to interact more and more with the women in the organization?
Yeah, it was 2013 when I initially got engaged and went down and pitched an idea to the executive director of what I thought would be a little fundraiser of teaching the women to sew a little bit. I had a tote bag that I had made out of my grandfather's suede coat. After he passed away, I got his coat, but it was too big, and the shoulder seams were ripped out, the elbows were worn out, so it wasn't really usable, but it was sentimental, hung in a closet for a long, long time, until one day I finally got the guts, I guess, to cut it up and made a tote bag out of it. So I thought, I can teach these girls to sew. We could get some discarded leather coats, make some cool bags, and maybe we could raise about $10,000. And I remember sharing that idea with a few people who said, wow, that's a big goal. Good luck. And we blew through that in about 6 months. And I just fell in love with the work that these girls are doing to change their lives and their commitment to wholeness and healthiness. And it didn't take much longer. It was August of 2014 when I heard a sermon on the calling of Elisha where God says, I have something more for you. And he is plowing the field, burns the plow, slaughters the oxen, and goes and does what he's called to do. And that Sunday I went home, I cried for the afternoon because I knew that it was time to walk away from a career which I never dreamed I would leave. I was running $1 billion piece of the business, so it was a pretty big job. You can't just drop that. But by the end of the week, I had told my boss that I knew I was going to be moving on to something else, and asked him to help me start wrapping up with the organization and preparing somebody else to come in and take my place. So by January of 2015, I resigned and was full-time growing Unshattered.
Wow. That's amazing how it flourished from you wanting to design a bag out of your grandfather's jacket. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And how
so this year we are
changed so many lives. Yes, that's great.
Yep, absolutely. So it is right now December 29th, and we're at $105,000 for this year of sales.
Wow.
So that's pretty exciting.
Amazing. Yeah. So, it seems different than what you were doing in corporate America, but I'm sure that you've probably learned some lessons in corporate America that have helped you to lead Unshattered, have you not?
Absolutely, yes. There's a lot of parallels. I joke sometimes, and in fact, I was talking to the girls yesterday about translating the skills that they learned through this job into other professions. That they're not just being trained to be seamstresses here, but they do the marketing. They do all of the sales work. They do all of the product development. They do all of the project management. So we were just talking about what other skills does that look like. But there's a lot of engineering involved in crafting a bag. You're just working with a soft, tangible material. So kind of helping them understand how those skills translate. But it's true for me as well, right? There's finance in this job. There's people management in this job. There's understanding your market. So all of those pieces of the equation that I developed through some really great training in my career all translate directly here.
And you mentioned a lot of the successes that you had during your time in corporate America, but I'm sure that as you were succeeding, you were also facing some challenges along the way. What kind of challenges did you face as you were striving to attain your personal career goals?
I think one of the biggest things I always struggled with was believing that I knew the most about the project that I was running at the time. And so, when you're in a high-performance culture and you have well-educated, highly experienced people, everybody's an expert, very, very deep experts, right? A lot of the people I worked with had PhDs, had been in the business for a long, long time, were really world-renowned experts in what they do. And I could get very intimidated because I didn't have their level of expertise. And it took me a while to learn, I might not know the depth of technical detail that they do on whatever piece of the business they're an expert in, but for my project and my organization and my business, nobody knows more about that than I do. And when I sort of got a hold of that lesson, I think it helped me accelerate because I was much more confident in my answers and my ability to persuade other people about what the right thing to do was, because I was confident that nobody knew better than I did about the context that I was working in.
Great insight. So what kind of leadership strategies have helped you to get ahead in your career?
I think, gosh, there's so many. There's so many, and it's ever evolving. I had great leadership training in the company that I was in. They were really focused on, for people who they thought would wind up in senior management, they were really, really focused in providing sort of ongoing training and experiences. So some of that was shadowing, senior vice presidents in the business. Some of it was a variety of experiences that you have. Kind of the common thread through all of that was you're not learning anything if you're not uncomfortable. And so it was always this push of stepping outside of your comfort zone, taking on ownership of something that you weren't an expert on in the beginning, taking on, sometimes they needed you to lead a bigger team of people, and sometimes it was a more dispersed team of people, and sometimes it was a technology that you had never been exposed to, and sometimes it was more customer-facing or more lab-facing. But being comfortable with being uncomfortable is what makes a great leader, because when you're out in the forefront, you don't know what the answer is. You asked in the beginning, how do some of those things translate with Unshattered? I don't know how to run a nonprofit. I've never done that before. I don't know how to structure a board. I don't know how to set up a payroll I worked for a big company. I had people to do all those things for me. So sort of muddling your way through these pieces of the equation that I don't have experience in, but I have confidence that I know how to solve problems, and I know how to find people that can advise me, and I know how to sort out when to listen to somebody's direct input and when to go with my gut about what I believe the right answer is, even if what they're saying is good advice. Again, nobody knows my business better than I do, so I can translate that advice into a better decision that I know is going to work the best for my company.
Great. So you hit on a really important point, which I think is a theme that comes up a lot when I coach women, which is women feel like they need to know everything before they get to the next level, or before they step into a promotion, or before they raise their hand for a new promotion or opportunity. And we don't always need to know everything. We just need to be resourceful and have confidence that you can acquire the knowledge and the information that you need as you go along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great.
There was a story about our CEO that she always told, that she had been offered a promotion, a big position, and she said, oh, geez, I don't know. Can I think about that overnight? And they said, absolutely. So she went home and she thought, and she said, I don't know if I'm ready. I feel like I need some more experience before this. And so she spoke to her husband and said, gosh, I got this great offer, but I don't think I'm ready for it. I think I need to, have a little bit more of this experience and this knowledge or whatever. He's like, are you crazy? Do you think a man would ever say, oh, but I'm just not ready for that job yet? Go take it. You're going to learn it when you get there. Nobody knows how to do the job before they get there. And so she would often talk about women think that they know how to do the job. They have to know how to do the job before they accept the job. And men think, great, I'll figure it out when I get there. And how do we sort of, as women, change our perspective of nobody knows. Nobody knows. You figure it out. And when you get that confidence in your ability to solve problems and ask good questions, and you're comfortable with being uncomfortable, there's really nothing you can't do.
Mm-hmm. And I love that concept about being uncomfortable, because that's really what leadership is about. And just from the perspective of someone who probably works for another person, right? We often think that the people that we work for that they're supposed to know everything. And sometimes I think from the employee perspective, we also have to have some grace on the people who manage organizations and who serve as bosses, because they don't always know what they're doing, but they're plowing ahead, and they've got to demonstrate confidence to their team so that their team can have confidence in them. So I think sometimes we need to extend that grace as well to people who are in leadership roles. Yep,
absolutely. Absolutely.
So what role does faith play in your career?
That's a great question. I look back at my college experience, and I went to a Christian university, but I studied physics and engineering there. And because it was a Christian university, there were quite a few people who were getting degrees in some kind of Bible history, or they wanted to go be Bible teachers or missionaries or serve in quote-unquote full-time ministry. And I remember at our graduation, they had, of the senior class, I don't remember what ceremony it was at, but at some point they had all of the students who were heading into, quote, full-time Christian ministry stand up so we could give them all a round of applause. And I don't take anything away from that because that is a very difficult and honorable space. But I remember in that moment thinking, wow, did God not call me to something that significant? Did I choose the lesser thing by wanting to go into the business world? There's just a very clear moment in my life of thinking, oh, this is the second tier of value. And I also remember praying at that time, like, okay, what can God do with a physics major? I mean, like I said, did I miss it? However, I guess two sort of answers to that. I had the privilege of sharing my faith at every level of the business that I was at. I would have, because I lived it out, I would have people come to me and ask, I know you're a Christian and your life looks different. Would you tell me about that? I can remember one trip where people of three other faiths, sort of unrelated at the time, but in their own way, each said, you have something in your life that I'm trying to get through this spirituality, but I don't have what you have. What does that look like for you? And it took me a while to figure it out and to feel comfortable with it, but there's no hard line between the ministry and the marketplace. Probably about 5 years into my career, somebody introduced me to this concept of the word avoda. I believe it's the Hebrew word avoda. That is the root word for both worship and work. And if you read in the original language, the Bible uses work to refer to worship very often. The very beginning of Scripture, God gave Adam work before the fall. There's a value in work. There's value that it brings to us and how it makes us feel. And there's a value in the service that we're offering something that God created us to do back to Him. And that doesn't necessarily look like ministry. It might look like building a house or driving a truck or leading an organization or selling a product. And so when I started to think of my work as my worship, it really changed my perspective of, first of all, what I'm showing up to do and the quality of my work, but kind of innately this value of what I'm doing. Jesus spent most of His time in the workplace, right? When He was ministering, He was in the marketplace talking to people. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if you look that up, like the stories in the New Testament, 75 to 80% of the time when Christ is referenced as speaking to people or telling stories or being with people, He's engaging in some degree with the marketplace, not in the church, not in the synagogue.
So yeah, so that we have to, every place where we are is our ministry, correct?
Absolutely.
Great. So what are some of your current personal goals and aspirations?
I have my eye on some companies who are doing the social enterprise thing, who have been pretty successful. And, like I said, my big, huge goal for Unshattered right out of the gate was $10,000, which we blew through right away. So we've cracked $105,000 for this year, and we are continuing to grow. So at the moment, we're just closing out 2016, and at the moment I feel like, oh, crap, now I have to do that again. And then on the other hand, I feel like, oh, my gosh, we're growing so quickly. How am I ever going to keep up? So it's, that weird tension of, just like we talked about in the beginning, I have no idea what I'm doing. How am I ever going to make this work? And I know how to make this work, and I know that we have runway, and people believe in this business, and they believe in the women that are working so hard to change their lives that I don't really see an end right now to our trajectory. So I would love to see continued growth. I would love to employ probably 5 or 6 more women this year. There's, like I said, there's some of those bigger companies out there that I would really like to start engaging with myself and learning from their experiences and their pitfalls and their challenges and their best practices and their strategy to apply some of that here at Unshattered. But I guess sort of to back up and give a little context as well. I mean, we talked about the fact that I was all in for my career, and by that I mean I was traveling like a maniac. I was working all the time. I was never off. And so at the tail end of that, while clearly I was called to go and do Unshattered full-time, I also needed to learn a pretty hard lesson about burnout and protecting my boundaries and understanding where I need to draw boundaries in my life so that I'm at my best self when I run this business. You know, they always say that it's true that, you know, you leave and you hope that people think of your work well, and you hope that you leave a big impact, and you hope that they miss you. But the reality is somebody's going to fill that gap, right? The company's not going to be crying for too long that you are not there. They're going to move on and do their thing, and that they are doing just fine without me. But when you're in that space, you feel like the world depends on you, and you don't have any room for error. So I guess I'm still grappling with those lessons of space in my life, relationships in my life, and rest, frankly, in my life. And as I go build something new, I recognize my tendencies to not have those things, and trying to figure out how do I build the discipline and the process to make sure that I do have them. That's hard. That's hard. When you're wired to be a leader and you're wired to achieve, it takes a lot of effort to not just do that all the time.
Right. And I love that you're saying that. I suffer from the same disease that you suffer from. And as I was looking at my goals for next year, you know, I was starting to think about what it is that I want to accomplish. And I think in the past what I've always done is, you know, those career accomplishments. And what I've done differently for next year is to think about what I want for myself personally first, which is things of, you know, one, my relationship with God, and, you know, my relationships with my family, my husband, my friends, my health. Think about all those things first, and then the career goals and the aspirations and things of that sort. So I appreciate what you're saying right now about taking that holistic perspective as you move forward. Even though you want to see a lot of success for Unshattered, you also want to make sure that you're grounded in your place, in your right place, frame of mind, and in your perspective so that you can lead effectively.
Yeah, I remember it was a couple years ago I sat down and made a list of all of the things in my life that were getting better, all of the things in my life that were staying the same, and all of the things in my life that were getting worse. And the only thing I could put on the getting better list was my bank account. My relationships weren't getting better because I wasn't investing time in them. My health wasn't getting better because I wasn't investing time in it. But even though I would have said all of those things were important, where my time went was to work. And that was improving the bank account, and that's about it, right? So it's kind of hard to back away from, I don't know, I think, Ellie, like you said, we have the same disease. But for me, it's responsibility, feeling like the responsible thing to do is to work as hard as possible, as long as possible, and do my best job all of the time. And that's frankly exhausting.
It is.
And now that I'm saying this out loud, interestingly, I'll give you a little parallel here. I just was working with one of the girls on my team yesterday, and we were talking about the mathematical equation that needs to be closed for somebody to employ, that they have to bring in more money than it costs to have them as an employee. And we had a problem with her pace and the quantity of product that she was making. Now, her quality and her craftsmanship are perfect. She's the best on the team. But it was taking her forever to get things done. And when I spent a couple hours with her yesterday, I realized that she is spending a whole lot of time fixing stitches, tying perfect knots, cutting threads perfectly on the inside of the bag that gets sewn up that nobody ever sees. Like, not the inside where you put stuff, but the inside between the liner, you know. that doesn't need to be perfect. And now that we're talking about it, I think, oh, yes, that is a perfect parallel for my life, that the conversation with her is figure out where it matters that those stitches are perfectly aligned. Figure out where the bag needs to be strong and robust. Figure out where people are going to inspect to check for quality. But you don't have to gold plate the inside of a pocketbook, right? It has to function and be strong and do its job, but you don't need to paint a masterpiece in there. And I think that's kind of true of our lives, that if you are that type A, highly responsible, whatever, you're applying that level of, I guess, effort to every single thing. And sometimes you got to just turn that dial back a little bit in the spaces where it really doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great. So it's all about do what matters and focus on what matters the most.
Right.
So, Kelly, this has been a great interview, and I'm sure that a lot of our listeners are going to want to learn more about Unshattered. Where can they learn more about Unshattered?
Well, thank you. They can go on unshattered.org, which is our website that has stories of the girls, the history of the business. There's a lot of information in there people can crawl around. Right now we sell our bags on Etsy, so there's a direct link over to Etsy, and we're in the process of building a store right on the website. So hopefully early next year we will get that launched. We are also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as Unshattered NY. And I don't know that we said this earlier, but you did say it's women who are in recovery, so women who have at least 12 months behind them of sobriety who are now working towards economic independence so they can sustain that sobriety. They make handbags out of all donated, repurposed materials. So we use things, like I said, discarded leather coats. We have bags out of retired Army uniforms. Twice this week we have trucks from New York City that came up with, I am forbidden from sharing the company that's what the fabric was crafted for, but a very, very high-end furniture company, and this was a dye lot that was just a little bit off color. So we have 2 trucks worth of gorgeous home interior fabrics, upholstery fabrics, all kinds of gorgeous stuff that literally I'm swimming in the middle of right now because the truck dropped it off and we haven't put it all away. So everything is donated, repurposed materials that goes into the bags. Yeah, thank you.
That's great. So we wish you a lot of success, Kelly, and the women who work with you and Unshattered, we wish them a lot of success as well. We're looking forward to seeing your future growth. And thank you so much for sharing a little bit of yourself today and your goals and your dreams. And we know that you're going to be another rising star in the next couple of years. We're going to keep our eye on you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ellie, for having me. I appreciate it. I appreciate your friendship and your coaching and just your perspective and care about women, that we lead. It's okay for us to lead. It's okay for us to aspire and to grow and to be in charge, but also you recognize that we have to do that in a healthy way, and it requires talking about it and struggling with it and thinking about it. So thank you for creating a space for all of us to do that.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And to all of our listeners today, thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, God bless.